I've been sitting in our guest room for 3 hours now, staring at the Eagles banner on the wall. Jake bought it for our first anniversary, back when we'd laugh about turning our apartment into a midnight green shrine. It's funny how something as simple as a football tradition can unravel everything. I guess I should start from the beginning. Jake and I met in college, bonding over our mutual obsession with the Eagles. Every game day, we'd cram into his tiny dorm room with a six-pack and a bag of pretzels, shouting at his laptop screen. When we moved in together after graduation, we made it official. Homemade nachos, jerseys on by 12:45, and absolutely no interruptions until the final whistle. It was our thing, a sanctuary from work stress and family drama. For 6 years, it worked. Then there's his family. The first time Jake invited me to their annual Super Bowl party, I thought it'd be fun. His dad's a season ticket holder. His mom makes these insane buffalo dip towers. It sounded like a fan's dream. But when we walked in, I immediately noticed the split. All the men were camped in front of the TV, beers in hand, while the women hustled between the kitchen and the basement, where a pack of kids screamed over a tablet. Jake's sister, Lisa, handed me an apron and said, "You're on dip duty. Don't let the cheese burn." I tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was a one-time thing. But the next year, same setup, and the year after that. Last Super Bowl, I just sat down with a plate of wings when Lisa yelled from the kitchen, "Need a hand with the oven." The dip had crusted into a blackened brick, and she shoved a steel wool pad at me. "Scrub it now or it'll stick forever." I missed the entire third quarter. When I came back, Jake was high-fiving his brother over a touchdown I didn't even see. That's when I snapped. We fought the whole drive home. I told him I felt like a servant, not a guest. He argued it's just how his family does things, but promised we'd skip this year. "We'll watch it at home, like always," he said. I believed him. Then, 2 weeks ago, he dropped the bomb. His dad's health was declining, and this might be his last Super Bowl. Jake looked me dead in the eye and said, "He's asking for us." I froze. His dad? The guy who bench presses twice a week and just got back from a golf trip? But Jake's voice cracked when he said it, so I bit my tongue until I found the receipt. It was sticking out of his gym bag, $500 at Home Depot for a patio heater, the same one his mom had mentioned months ago. Wouldn't it be nice to have for the party? I'd shrugged it off, but there it was, dated 3 weeks prior. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. "I knew you'd get over it," he said, like I was a toddler refusing broccoli. That's when the guilt trip started. His mom called to check in and casually mentioned how real fans support their team anywhere. Lisa texted me a photo of their dad napping in his Eagles snuggie with the caption, "He's not getting any younger." Even Jake's tone shifted. Suddenly, my refusal was embarrassing him, making him look like he couldn't control his woman. His words, not mine. The worst part? The money. We've had a joint account for 2 years ever since we got engaged. We agreed, big purchases get discussed first. But last week, I noticed a $200 cash withdrawal. When I asked, Jake shrugged, "Groceries." Except we put groceries on a credit card for the points. Then I remembered the cupcakes. He brought them home yesterday, Eagles-themed, with little football toppers. "I'm trying here," he said, setting them on the counter. "Why can't you?" For a second, I almost caved. But then I thought about the $200, the patio heater, the way he'd laughed on the phone with his brother. I'd overheard him saying, "She'll cave once she realizes nobody's on her side." It wasn't anger in his voice. It was confidence. My best friend Mara offered to watch the game with me. She's a single mom who spent years unlearning the same happy homemaker crap Jake's family peddles. "Come over," she said. "We'll order pizza and mute the commentary." But when I told Jake, he looked scared. "You'd really abandon me?" he asked. The guilt hit like a gut punch. I barely slept last night. My boss pulled me aside yesterday about missed deadlines. I've been so distracted checking our bank statements, I forgot to submit a client report. Jake's been working late a lot lately, but his location sharing's been off. I wish I could say I trust him. This morning, Lisa texted again. "Don't ruin this for Dad. You're not the only one who matters." I almost threw my phone. Their dad isn't sick. I Googled him last week. He's in a fantasy league with his buddies and posted a 5K time faster than mine. But when I tried to tell Jake that, he just said, "Why are you like this?" So here I am. The game's tomorrow. Jake's in our bedroom, scrolling through his phone. I'm in the guest room, typing this out because I don't know who's right anymore. Part of me wants to show up, to prove I'm not difficult. But the other part remembers scrubbing that oven, the men's laughter booming through the wall as I missed the game I'd waited all season to see. Maybe it's not about football. Maybe it's about sitting at a kid's table for the rest of my life. I don't know. All I know is, whatever I choose tomorrow, something's gonna break. Now for the first update. It's been 36 hours since I posted, and honestly, I don't even recognize my life anymore. I'll start with the game. I stayed home. Jake slammed the door so hard on his way out that the Eagles banner fell off the wall. The nail left a jagged crack in the plaster, and I just stared at it for 10 minutes, wondering if that's what we'd become. Something fragile, hanging by a thread, until it wasn't. His mom texted me halfway through the third quarter. No context, just, "Jake's crying in the garage. Happy now?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't care, but because I knew if I opened that door, I'd spiral. Instead, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, watching the game alone. The Eagles won, but it felt hollow, like eating cake after a funeral. My friend Mara showed up around 9 p.m. with a six-pack and a pizza. She didn't say "I told you so," which is why I love her. We sat cross-legged on the rug, and I wordlessly handed her my phone with his mom's text. She read it, snorted, and said, "Classic guilt-tripping bullshit." Then she pointed at the TV. "You see that catch? That's karma." I almost smiled. Jake came home at midnight. I heard his keys fumbling in the lock, the stumble of his boots on the tile. He reeked of whiskey and onion dip. "You humiliated me," he said, leaning against the doorway of the guest room. His tie was crooked, and his eyes were red. Not from crying, I don't think. From anger. Or maybe the garage was dusty. In front of my dad, my dying dad. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? I'd spent the last 4 hours digging through our shared Google photos, looking for proof his dad was actually sick. All I found were vacation pics from Aruba 2 months ago. His dad shirtless on a jet ski, grinning like a retiree in a sandals commercial. The next morning, I opened the fridge to get milk for coffee and found a stack of Tupperware. His sister had labeled them in Sharpie, "For Jake only." The smiley face felt like a slap. I texted Lisa, "Since when does Jake hate potato salad?" She left me on read. That's when I checked our shared calendar. Jake had booked a couples therapy session for next Thursday. No discussion, no "hey, should we try this?" Just a cold blue block on the screen labeled Dr. Bennett, 3 p.m. I'd never even heard of Dr. Bennett. Then I remembered the steakhouse charge. 2 nights ago, Jake came home late smelling like cologne and garlic bread. "Work dinner," he'd said, shrugging off his blazer. But his credit card showed a $300 charge to Morton's on a Saturday. When I asked him about it this morning, he froze. "It was a client thing, last minute." "On a weekend?" I said. "You're interrogating me like I'm a criminal," he snapped. But his voice did that thing, the slight uptick at the end, like he was asking a question instead of answering one. I called his brother's wife, Clara. "We're not close, but she's the only one in that family who ever liked me." She answered on the 4th ring, her voice hushed. "Look, I shouldn't be telling you this," she said, "but his dad's fine, like fine. He just bought a boat." I hung up and stormed into the living room where Jake was pretending to watch ESPN. "Your dad's not sick," I said. "He's retiring, on a boat." Jake's face went pale, then red. "You made me desperate," he shouted, throwing the remote. It hit the wall and left a dent. "You wouldn't listen, so I had to make you listen." I slept in the guest room again. He didn't follow me. The next day, my mom called. "Just apologize," she said. "Men need to save face sometimes." But my dad, who's been married to her for 30 years, grabbed the phone. "Don't budge, kiddo. This isn't about football." Jake ignored me all day. Not a word, even though I made his favorite lasagna for dinner, a peace offering, I guess. But then he posted a photo of us on Facebook. It was from 6 months ago at a friend's wedding. My smile looks forced. His arm is around me like a vice. The caption, "Rough patch, prayers appreciated." Comments poured in from his family. "Stay strong, she'll come around." Lisa DM'd me, "You're tearing this family apart. Is football really worth it?" I wanted to scream. It was never about the game. It was about the oven. the kids' table, the way his dad called me sweetheart but never learned my job title. That night, I found a note in Jake's jacket pocket while doing laundry. Call Realtor Reinvestment Properties, 10 a.m. Tuesday. We've never talked about buying a house, not once. Mara texted me a screenshot later. Jake's dating profile active again. A selfie from his brother's bachelor party last year, shirtless and holding a beer. His bio, looking for someone low drama who knows what they want. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. I forgot to delete it, okay? It's not a big deal. We're engaged, I said. Are we? He shot back. I packed a bag and left for my dad's. Jake didn't try to stop me, just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, as I shoved socks into a duffel. His voicemail came in at midnight. Come home. We need to talk about the future. His voice was calm, almost robotic, like he'd practiced it. I'm on my dad's couch now, typing this under a blanket that smells like his aftershave. Part of me wants to go back, to fix this, to be the girl who scrubbed the oven and laughed about it later. But the other part keeps thinking about the patio heater, the steakhouse, the realtor's number in his pocket. Jake's future isn't mine. I think I've known that for a while. Update 2 days later. I'm still at my dad's. Jake's sister texted this morning. You win. Happy? I didn't reply. I'm not sure anyone wins here. Now for the second update. It's been a week since my last post, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how fast everything unraveled. I'll start with the meeting at the apartment. Jake texted me on Tuesday morning, we need to talk. Please come home. The word home felt like a lie already. When I walked in, he was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded like he'd rehearsed this. The patio heater he'd bought for his mom was still in the corner, still in the box. I remember thinking, of course he didn't even bother to give it to her. He started with this whole speech about compromise, how he'd skip his family's parties forever if I just agreed to go to therapy with him. Dr. Bennett's got great reviews, he said, sliding a brochure toward me. His voice was calm, but his knee was bouncing under the table. I kept staring at the brochure, stock photos of smiling couples holding hands. What about the steakhouse charge, I asked. He blinked. What? The $300 at Morton's. On a Saturday. You said it was a work dinner. He leaned back, crossing his arms. It was. Some clients wanted to meet last minute, you know how it is. I didn't. His job in sales rarely required weekends, but I let it go because part of me wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe anything that could make this feel fixable. Then I saw his gym bag by the door. He'd left it unzipped, and poking out was a toiletry kit I'd never seen before. Travel-sized shampoo, a razor, toothpaste. Jake's idea of self-care was using 3-in-1 body wash and calling it a day. He'd never once showered at the gym. Since when do you pack an overnight kit? I said, trying to sound casual. He froze. I started going to the new location downtown. Their showers are nicer. I called his office the next day. His secretary, Linda, picked up. Oh, hey, she said too brightly. Jake's actually at lunch right now again. Again, a pause. He's been taking long lunches all week, like 2-hour ones. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking, not because I thought he was cheating, though that crossed my mind, but because the lies were stacking up faster than I could untangle them. That night, I confronted him. Where are you really going at lunch? And don't say the gym, because Linda said you're MIA every afternoon. He slammed his coffee mug down. You're obsessed with punishing me. I can't even breathe without you treating it like a crime. I'm not punishing you, I said quietly. I'm just asking for the truth. He grabbed his keys and left for his brother's house. I didn't sleep. Instead, I logged into our savings account. $15,000 was gone. The transaction was labeled Transfer to Asiat X3947, an account I'd never heard of. I called my dad at 6 a.m., and by noon, he'd connected me with a lawyer. Her name was Diane, and she didn't mince words. Freeze the joint accounts, now. Jake showed up at my dad's house that evening. He looked wrecked. Stubble, wrinkled shirt, eyes bloodshot. Please, he said, voice cracking. Give me one more chance, I'll fix this. Where's the money, Jake? He looked at the ground. It's complicated. Complicated how? You wouldn't understand. I shut the door. The next day, his mom's letter arrived, handwritten on that fancy stationery she uses for Christmas cards. Jake's under so much stress because of you, it said. Call off the wedding before you destroy him. I almost laughed. Destroy him? I went back to the apartment to pack my things. While digging through the closet, I found a receipt crumpled in the pocket of an old jacket. $2,000 at a jewelry store, dated 3 weeks ago. The necklace wasn't in my jewelry box. I texted Jake a photo of the receipt. His reply came instantly. It's for Mom's birthday. His mom's birthday was in January. It was March. His sister, Lisa, called me that night. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her again. He borrowed $5,000 from me last month, she said. Told me it was for a medical bill. But then I saw the loan papers. Turns out Jake had taken a $20,000 loan against our shared car. Diane, the lawyer, found the paperwork. He forged your signature, she said. That's fraud. I changed my number. Jake showed up at my office 2 days later, demanding to talk. My boss called security. I watched from the window as they let him out, his face red, shouting something I couldn't hear. Now I'm staying with my dad indefinitely. Diane's building the case, and every day we find something new. Hidden accounts, more lies, more debts. Part of me wants to scream. Part of me wants to cry. But mostly, I'm just tired. The other night, my dad ordered pizza and put on an Eagles highlight reel. No pressure, no gender roles, no frantic texts, just us and a half-eaten cheese pie. You okay? He asked during a commercial break. I shrugged. I don't know, he nodded. That's fair. Jake's sister texted again yesterday. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't reply. What's there to say? I keep thinking about the day Jake proposed. We were at a park and he fumbled the ring box, dropping it in the grass. We spent 10 minutes laughing and digging through the dirt. Now I wonder if he was nervous or if he'd already started hiding things. Diane says the legal stuff could take months. I'm trying not to think that far ahead. For now, I'm focusing on small things. The smell of my dad's coffee in the morning, the way Mara sends me memes at 2 a.m., the fact that I haven't scrubbed a single dish in weeks. Jake's future isn't mine. And for the first time in a long time, that doesn't scare me. Now for the final update. It's been 3 weeks since my last update. 3 weeks of unraveling lies, legal battles, and realizing how much of my life was built on a foundation of someone else's secrets. I'll start with the phone call from Jake's mom. She called my dad's landline, probably because I'd changed my number, and left this icy voicemail about defamation. Return the ring, or we'll sue, she said, like I'd stolen some family heirloom instead of wearing a diamond Jake had bought with money he'd apparently siphoned from our shared accounts. My lawyer, Diane, snorted when I told her. Defamation requires false statements, she said. Truth is an absolute defense. Let them try. But still, hearing his mom's voice again, that clipped, imperious tone, made my hands shake, not from fear, from rage. The next day, Diane called with updates. Jake had a secret account, not just the $15 he'd transferred, but another one, $8,000 spent on hotels, gifts, and a ski trip to Vermont. Vermont? I remember saying, my voice flat. He told me he was at a sales conference in Pittsburgh that week. Diane paused, then said gently, and I'll need copies of any texts or emails from that time. I hung up and scrolled back through my photos, found a selfie I'd sent him from my office that week, me in a hoodie, caption, missing you. He'd replied, you too, crazy busy here. Sent from a hotel IP address in Stowe. I didn't cry, I just felt hollow, like my body had already run out of tears for him. 2 days later, I ran into Jake at our favorite diner. Not on purpose. I'd gone there for the pancakes, because some masochistic part of me wanted to reclaim the place where we'd had anniversary breakfasts. He was sitting in our usual booth, alone, staring at his phone. For a second, I considered walking out, but then he looked up and his face went pale. Can we talk? He said, sliding over as I stood there, gripping my keys. I sat, not because I wanted to, but because leaving felt like letting him win. He ordered coffee, black, 2 sugars, and I realized I still knew his order by heart. Your lawyer's tearing me apart, he said, avoiding my eyes. You know I didn't mean for any of this to happen, right? Did you mean to cheat? The words came out before I could stop them. He flinched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Silence. The waitress refilled his coffee, her eyes darting between us. When she left, he leaned forward, voice low. You pushed me away. You were always so rigid with the party, the money stuff. The money stuff? I laughed, sharp and brittle. You stole from me from your sister. From us. I was stressed. His fist hit the table, rattling the silverware. You have no idea what it's like trying to keep up with everything. The wedding, my dad's expectations. Who was she? He froze. What? The ski trip, the necklace, the $300 steakhouse dinner. Who was she? His shoulders slumped. Her name's Amanda, from work. I'd expected it, but hearing it, the blunt, ugly truth, felt like a punch. How long? A few months. He wouldn't look at me. It didn't mean anything. Bullshit. My voice was steady, which surprised me. You don't take someone to Vermont for a week if it doesn't mean anything. He opened his mouth, then closed it. That's when I realized my phone was recording in my pocket. Diane had told me it was legal here, as long as one party consents. I'd started doing it after the financial fraud came to light, just in case. Did you ever want to marry me? I asked, because some part of me still needed to hear it. He stared at his coffee. I thought I did, but you were always so difficult. You made everything harder. By existing, by expecting you to be honest, by never letting anything go. His voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. The Super Bowl thing, the money, it's like you enjoyed catching me in lies. I didn't enjoy it, Jake. I just noticed. He shook his head. You don't get it. I never wanted this, any of it. The wedding? Yes. The word hung there, sharp and final. I stood up, threw a $10 bill on the table, and walked out. The recording ended as the diner door slammed behind me. I sent the file to Diane first, then, against her advice, to his family. Not to hurt them, not even to clear my name. I just wanted someone, anyone, in his life to know the truth. His sister, Lisa, replied first. I'm sorry, we had no idea. His dad called my dad an hour later, offering to repay the $20 loan if I'd keep this quiet. I told him no, not out of spite, because Diane said accepting could look like extortion, because I was done trading silence for scraps of decency. The police report was filed on a Thursday. By Friday, Jake was fired. His company found out about the loan scams, the forged documents, the misuse of corporate resources. Turns out Amanda was his subordinate. I didn't celebrate. I sat on my dad's couch, eating cold lo mein, and wondered when I'd stop feeling like the villain in his story. The ring sold for $9,500. Diane's fees are $300 an hour. My dad offered to cover the difference, but I refused. It's his debt, I said, not yours. Last weekend, my dad and I watched the Eagles playoff game. No party, no dip to scrub, just us and a pile of nachos. At halftime, he muted the TV and said, You know, your mom would have been proud of you. For leaving him? For staying you. I didn't cry, but I hugged him, hard. Jake's mom mailed back my childhood photos a few days later. The ones she'd framed for the grandkids we'll never have now. The note inside said, You've done enough damage. I burned it in my dad's fireplace. The photos I kept. Then at the grocery store, I ran into Amanda. She was in the cereal aisle holding a box of Lucky Charms. She recognized me instantly. She said, eyes wide, I'm so sorry. He told me you were separated, that it was over. When? October. We got engaged in September. She quit her job the next day, sent me a LinkedIn message. I should have known. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. What could I say? Thanks for not being complicit in my fiancé's double life. Jake's brother texted me last week. You destroyed him. I stared at my screen for a full minute before typing. He did that himself. Diane says the criminal charges could stick. Embezzlement, fraud, forgery, his lawyers pushing for a plea deal. I don't feel happy, just tired and relieved, like I've been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. I moved into a studio apartment near my job. It's tiny. The shower's basically a glorified sink, but it's mine. No Jake, no hissing radiator he kept promising to fix, no guilt-tripping notes on the fridge. Just me and my thrift store couch. My boss promoted me last Monday. Turns out the client Jake badmouthed me to, the one he called high maintenance, loved my pitch. You're tenacious, she said when she signed the contract. I like that. Lisa's birthday card arrived yesterday. No return address, just her loopy handwriting. I get it now, I'm leaving my husband too. I taped it to my fridge, not as a trophy, as a reminder that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Tonight I'm hosting my own Super Bowl party. 10 friends, vegan chili, Mara's recipe, a case of IPA, and a TV I bought with the ring money. No assigned seats, no kids' table, no frantic texts from Jake's mom about team spirit. At halftime, we'll probably play Cards Against Humanity, or just talk, or sit in comfortable silence. It doesn't matter. For the first time in years, I'm not worried about missing a touchdown. I'm not sure what happens next. The legal stuff will drag on. Jake might try to apologize again. His mom might send more letters, but tonight I'm letting myself breathe, and honestly, it feels like enough.